is very different in the United States and Japan. So I think that cultural difference makes it a little more difficult for people to understand who Shohei Ohtani is. Although he's almost 30 now, he's still that little league kid who loves baseball, who loves to be on the field, and everything is secondary to him. He doesn't even use his own salary,
Oh,
own money.
right.
He has nothing, no interest in clothes, fashion or cars or anything.
Do you think that American baseball culture should learn something from the Japanese baseball culture?
Whereas in Japan, they put a strong emphasis on something other than winning. It's more about life lessons. It's more about self-improvement. So that I think that's what sets Japanese baseball apart from the American counterpart.
So, Tomoya Shimura, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Tomoya, you are a journalist living in California, based in California, and covering Shohei Ohtani, and I'm a journalist living in Tokyo. So, today's topic is about the secret behind Shohei Ohtani's success. Especially, we're going to talk about high school baseball in Japan, which is a big thing in Japan, but which a lot of our international audience would not know about. So, my first question is about Shohei Ohtani. Do you see any difference between Japanese fans and American fans?
Well, obviously, Shohei Ohtani is a much bigger figure for Japanese fans compared to fans in the United States. Ohtani is almost like a godlike figure in Japan, admired by everyone, pretty much. His face is everywhere in billboards across the city, on TV, where his game highlights are featured throughout the day, and in countless commercials.
Mhm.
And he's a significant source of national pride, especially because he's dominating the major leagues in home runs, which is a symbol of power. Historically, many Japanese people felt inferior in terms of power compared to Westerners, but
Mhm.
Otani's success in this area has given them a sense of pride and confidence, I think.
I see. Because I living in Japan, I see every single go to every station, I see signs of Shohei Ohtani, and you're not even supposed to criticize Shohei Ohtani because he's so perfect.
That's what Japanese people think, yes, and that's what Japanese media is trying to convey, yes. And from my reporting, he is a kind of pure baseball. He grew up. Uh, as a little leaguer,
Mhm.
he loved baseball, and he just grew. And that child just became an adult baseball player, and he's
Right.
still a person whose motivation comes mostly from just pure love of baseball, pure love of game, and you can see that in his. Not just in his interviews and just looking at his performance on the field, he seems to be enjoying every minute of it.
Right. People in Japan think he's like a character of a manga, a comic character, because he's so manga. He's like the perfect hero.
Yes, there's just so many surprises covering him. I think it was most evident in the World Baseball Classic when in the championship game. The story couldn't have been better. The narrative. Otani, I think, had a great game leading up to it. He was a hitter in the beginning, and then Japan, I think, came back and into well, Japan was leading in the ninth inning, and then Otani, they decided to put Otani as a pitcher, as a closer. And in his last batter he faced was his teammate Mike Trout, the best player, the one of the best hitters in the world. And Otani struck him out, and he had this victory pose, and it was just so dramatic. And he was one of the best hitters, and then he was one of the best pitchers in that tournament. And he deserved to be the MVP, and he was more than that. I think he elevated the status of the World Baseball Classic because of what he did.
Right. I have the feeling that international fans, American fans, do not really know his kind of character, and I believe he's like the perfect person of a character. And this is because maybe the language problems, because he doesn't really do media interviews. So, but as a Japanese, I've seen Otani speak in media conferences in Japanese. I know him since his high school days. So, uh, Tomoya, so could you explain and elaborate on like what kind of a person Otani is?
Well, it's very difficult because he's a very private person, and when he's talking to the media, it seems like he always puts kind of a barrier. He's just, it's not that, he's being careful with his words, and then he rarely talks about his own emotions or feelings. So it's really hard to know. But from my reporting of him, talking to people who know of him, and then, talking to him in, these media interviews, like I said, he just love he's a kid, he's a uh, although he's almost 30 now, he's still that little league kid who loves baseball, who loves to be on the field, and he wants to improve in baseball, and everything is secondary to him. And that was evident, I think, in this recent scandal with his former interpreter,
Right.
because that allegedly the interpreter stole $17 million from his bank account. But Ohtani apparently never checked his bank account over the last 5 years, didn't even notice the money was missing. That really shows that the money is not important to him. Another thing that shows that is when he decided to come to the US, had he waited 2 more years, he probably would have earned 200 million plus dollars from his first year, in his first year in Major League. Instead, he decided to come here a year earlier, a year or two earlier, and make the least, the minimum salary in the major leagues, so that he can, he has more time to develop, as a baseball player. So that really shows that his motivation is not money or fame, it's his love for baseball.
Tomoya, you mentioned about Otani doesn't care much about money, and my American friend said, "Oh, really?" But in Japan, people thought, "Yeah, Otani-san, it makes sense." I think, do you see that difference?
Yes, it's a huge difference because I had the same experience too. I was, when Otani came over, I was working for a newspaper in the United States, and
Mhm.
then my fellow reporters, they asked me, "Hey, what is Otani like? Does he, how come, is it true that he doesn't care about money? That can't be true, right?" And I try to explain to them, like, as far as I know, from everything that I've heard about Otani, he really doesn't, he doesn't even use his, own salary,
Oh,
own
right.
money. He has nothing, no interest in clothes, fashion, or cars or anything. And I try to explain to Americans that, you know, in Japanese culture, there is some stigma about against talking about money in public,
Right.
or trying to earn as much money as possible.
Mhm.
It's almost inappropriate to to want to earn as much money as possible. Like, when you negotiate your salary, you should know you focus. You should not be. You shouldn't be doing whatever you can to do that. You shouldn't talk about money too much. I think you can understand that, right?
Yeah, it's
But
very
that
Japanese.
concept, yes, is very different in the United States and Japan. So I think that cultural difference makes it a little more difficult for people to understand who Shohei Ohtani is.
So this is kind of famous mandala chart Otani created during his high school days, and this is unique. So he created this chart in order to pick the number of draft for a professional baseball in Japan, and he's talking not about the control of his pitching or his training methods, but he's talking about you know cleaning his room or saying thank you to the umpire and reading a book. Could you elaborate on this? I feel this makes sense for a Japanese fan that a high school baseball player will not only practice baseball, but try to build his character, being thankful to others or cleaning his room. Could you elaborate on this?
Well, there definitely is a strong emphasis
Mhm.
on not just winning. In Japan, there's in Japanese youth sports, including high school, they place a strong emphasis on not just winning, but also teaching values like discipline, respect, and sportsmanship. And
Mhm.
the process of getting better as a baseball player, and the journey, of becoming a better player, are often seen as more important rather than the result, wins and losses. And additionally, parents in Japan tend to be more reserved on the sidelines, right? And likely, it's likely because they care about, I guess how they're viewed by others. The results, that kind of atmosphere results in a more positive and supportive atmosphere at sports. I guess I'm kind of sidetracked there, but I feel the difference there because there's so much emphasis on competition in high school baseball here, and youth sports nowadays in the United States, whereas in Japan, they put a little more emphasis on strong emphasis on something other than winning. It's more about life lessons. It's more about self-improvement. So that I think that's what sets Japanese baseball apart from the American counterpart.
Right. We see Shohei Ohtani, taking care of his bad gloves, picking up the garbage, and the former Major League Baseball player Ichiro Suzuki had his own like a bag for to carry his own bats. So do you think that that is very different from other Major League Baseball players?
Um, you know, we do talk about picking up trash. I mean, I, I know there are some players who do that in the United States, but I think it's more. I think more Japanese players do that, and I think
Hmm.
they've been taught to do so from childhood. I grew up in Japan, and I was told to pick up trash that someone else threw away, and try to clean neighbors driveway,
Yeah.
to show respect for that person. So I think that extends into baseball. And I think there is a cultural difference that is evident in baseball. Those cultural differences show up in not just on the field in baseball.
So Tomoya, let's talk about high school baseball in Japan because high school baseball is really huge in Japan. So it's called Koshien, the summer Koshien. It originally started from 1915, and it's interesting that a newspaper company, Asahi and Mainichi, they sponsor the event, and it's sometimes more popular than professional baseball. And so basically, there's 47 prefectures in Japan, and one team from each prefecture get picks. So it means a lot for a local community. And it's like a baseball tournament. And whenever a team loses, it's like a huge thing. And even the players, they shave their heads. They pick up the sand because the sand of the Koshien Stadium is seem to be very sacred. So could you explain to the American or international audience what it means for Japanese baseball players to play in Koshien or high school baseball?
Well, like you said, it's the summer event is called
Yeah.
Summer Koshien, and it captures the most attention, even more than professional baseball in terms of viewership sometimes.
Yeah.
And one reason for its popularity is that many Japanese fans see National High School Baseball as a pure form of the sport, right? Unlike professional baseball, where players are often seen as playing for money. And the tournament format, I think, also, where it's win or go home single elimination adds drama and excitement, like playoffs. So a playoff atmosphere, much like March Madness in the United States. And fans are drawn to the raw emotions of the players who play their hearts out for a single game. And another reason is that the long-standing tradition and history of high school baseball. So, like you said, the tournament began in 1915, predating professional baseball in Japan, and the game has retained many of its classic elements over the years, like players with buzz cuts and all wearing white uniforms, and the ritual of collecting dirt after the game. So, if you saw the game now, it's not that much different from there were no TV cameras back then, but from 100 years ago. And fans still talk about these historical moments at Summer Koshien, like Daisuke Matsuzaka's legendary 250 pitch game. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's it's shown as it's a story that's been told over and over. And additionally, there's a strong sense of community and connection because teams represent their prefectures in the summer tournament, and many people know someone who attended the school or they sometimes might have gone there. And this local representation fosters a deep connection and pride, I think, similar to the way people in the United States feel about college or high school football.
But I see also criticism against the Koshien high school baseball because, like the haircut, they can't choose. But there's some teams you can choose your haircut, but you have to like you shave your head and something. And also, the spirit of high school baseball. Some people even cry watching high school baseball. It's very, I like to watch it, but at the same time, for if you're a pitcher, you have to, throw from first inning to ninth inning, and you're not supposed to quit, and which sometimes leads to injuries. Do you think, what do you think about that criticism?
Well, I think that's legitimate from a development standpoint in many ways because I'm a parent too of a
Yeah.
baseball player, a young baseball player. And when I was in Japan, I always saw Koshien as a negative, from negatively from this development standpoint because a lot of schools will try to focus on short-term wins instead of thinking about long-term development, whether the if you think about the player's future, sometimes you don't want to make that pitcher pitch 150 pitches,
Mhm.
and he might get injured on the way, on his way to professional baseball. That could, it could ruin his career. And and then they tend to do things that are short term. So like making contact is more important than, swinging for home runs. That's why, part of the reason why Japanese baseball doesn't have as many power hitters compared to the United States.
Mm.
And so there are some downsides, obviously. And I'm pretty, and also there's, there's less of it now, but there was bullying involved in the past regarding high school baseball, and because there was strong, seniority system, and there were a lot of that and harassment. So there are a lot of downsides to it. But at the same time, it is true that players do learn things outside of baseball. They learn, life lessons, and and they because they don't have to think about anything other than, baseball. I think it really tests their love for the game. And I think there are a lot of positive, well, I mean, there are positives to it. I do understand.
Yeah, I agree. So, Tomoya, you coach Little League Baseball. Do you think that American baseball culture should learn something from the Japanese baseball culture?
Yes, I think. Well, in a way, American sports culture is becoming similar to Japan's, especially in terms of early specialization.
Ah,
Many young athletes now in the US, they focus on playing one sport year-round, much like their counterparts in Japan.
hmm.
And there's also a growing emphasis on long hours of training and development skills from a young age, with parents and coaches becoming increasingly strict. And interestingly, Japan is moving in the opposite direction,
Hmm.
trying to adopt more of the American model, where coaches and parents are more lenient and encourage risk taking and use positive reinforcement. So in some aspects, the US is becoming more like Japan, and Japan more like the US. But I think there are important lessons that American youth sports can learn from Japan. Japanese youth sports place a strong emphasis, like I said, on not just the winning, but teaching values like discipline, respect, and sportsmanship. So, you know, I think American sports overall can benefit from viewing competition not just as an end in it, as an end in itself, but as a means to achieve broader goals, such as developing lifelong skills or making friends and building character. So, yes, there's definitely things you can learn.
So let's talk about Otani's high school days. So he went to a high school called Hanamaki Higashi High School, which is northern part of Japan. So there's a lot of snow. So people say that it's di very difficult to train in the winter, to practice or even have a game in the winter. So the coach, he's a very good coach. He's called Hiroshi Sasaki. They created a special training set for Otani to even to be able to train in the winter. And also, he let Otani eat a lot of rice, and Otani gained 20 kilograms, which is like about 44 pounds. And also, there's an interview of this coach Sasaki in the Asahi Shimbun that so let me cite from the article. So Sasaki, the coach, he his hobby is bonsai. So it's basically there's a tree and you put a wire on the tree and the bonsai trees. And he's saying that bonsai and baseball coaching has similarities. When you create a bonsai tree, you put a wire on the branches to kind of guide the branches to, direct to a certain direction. So he's saying that in high school days, it's important to respect the high school baseball players, but at the same time, the coach has to guide something and to head to a certain direction. What do you think about Coach Sasaki and especially high school baseball in Japan?
Well, Coach Sasaki definitely, I think, played a huge role in Otani's development. And he himself said that, a coach cannot create a great players, but they can ruin them. And
Mhm.
I think that is so true. And I think Coach Sasaki did a great job, nurturing Otani's potential to become this greatest baseball player probably ever. And having someone like him, I think Otani, well, he probably chose him. I think it's meant to be, but in a way, he was lucky, right? And I think he was fortunate that I think it's fortunate for baseball that Ohtani found person like him as his coach in high school, because high school baseball in Japan, they like I said, they could ruin players, and Sasaki never allowed that to happen with Ohtani.
Um, Not only high school baseball, but also the Japanese society can ruin players because, Tomoya, you lived in Japan. So if you're a nail, if you stick out the hammer, you get hammered. And so you're not supposed to stand out in Japanese culture. However, Coach Sasaki let Otani be a two-way player. So he didn't force him to just focus on batting, just focus on pitching, but he kind of respected Otani's will to become a two-way base. Do you think that's very unusual for a Japanese coach to kind of guide Otani to being a very good two-way player?
Um, Actually, in high school baseball, it is pretty normal in
Uh,
Japan and the
mhm.
United States to be able to pitch and hit, to be both pitcher and a
Right.
hitter. So usually your best pitcher is the best hitter too. So
That's
like
true.
Matsuzaka
Yeah.
was. So, but Sasaki always, cared about Otani's long-term development.
Mhm.
That he never allowed Otani to pitch more than he should,
Mhm.
and because he didn't sacrifice Ohtani for team's win. He always put individuals ahead of team's victory.
Mhm.
And that's what made him one of the most successful coaches in Japanese baseball. He not only developed Ohtani, but he also Yusei Kikuchi from the Blue Jays. He was also
Right.
was also played for Sasaki. So that kind of attitude really help these professional players.
You're right. Some high school, there are not many that much in these days, but maybe 5 or 10 years or 20 years ago, there was actually high school baseball coaches that only cared about the careers during the high school days because high school baseball is, since it's so huge in Japan, the coach often did not care about after high school days. So I think that made a very difference in Otani becoming a Major League Baseball player.
I totally agree. And he certainly lived by, Mr. Sasaki seems to really live by his words. He knows that he can ruin a player. And I think, I've read his interviews. I never interviewed him in person, but from the interviews that I've read, he's a very smart person who gets idea from other, from the business world, and he reads a lot, and then he's very knowledgeable in a lot of different concepts outside of sports, and that helped him, think, think about his players in a more wholesome way. So yeah, I think he's a great coach.
Right. So do you think more Japanese baseball players will go to the Major League Baseball?
I think so. I don't think this trend is going to stop, for several reasons. First, top baseball players in Japan want to challenge themselves and reach their full potential. They know
Hmm.
that the Major League Baseball is the highest level of baseball in the world, and playing there is a dream for many. And once they achieve everything they can in Japanese baseball, it's natural for them to want to test themselves in the United States. And secondly, the success of players like Ohtani, Yu Darvish, and Shota Imanaga, more recent one, served as an inspiration, I think. And young players who grew up watching major leagues and seeing Japanese players succeed there aspire to follow their footsteps. These
Hmm.
players often receive more attention and recognition in Japan compared to those who stay in the domestic league. So um, and additionally, MLB offers greater financial rewards for those who succeed. Even an average player in the US can earn more than a top player in Japan in most cases. And so, this financial incentive, combined with the desire for international recognition and the challenge of competing at the highest level, I think drives many Japanese players to aim for Major League MLB.
You think the Japanese culture, I believe that Japanese culture has also changed because in 1995, when Hideo Nomo went to the LA Dodgers, newspapers and the media wrote so much bad stories about Hideo Nomo. He's a traitor. Don't come back to Japan. You're disrespectful. Do you feel the Japanese society has also changed of, players going from professional Japanese baseball to Major League Baseball?
I think it definitely has. I think most fans were not against Onomo going there, but it was mostly people who were involved in the world and the media who, try
Yeah.
to who tend to listen to those people more. But I think the fans were excited that
Yeah.
that their own player was going, on his own, by himself to the highest level of baseball, league in the world and succeed there. And people were just so excited to see Nomo see him succeed in the United States. So but the society I think has changed in a way that now, people even the people who who care so much about Japanese professional baseball, they know that, it's inevitable. These players who, who achieve the highest level in Japanese baseball, they want to go to the United States. So I think they've come to terms with it, and now they're thinking, so why, what's the um you know what are we, why do we have Nippon Professional Baseball for? Is it, is it simply to just be the stepping stone for players to get, Japanese players to go to the major leagues, or is it going to be something else? So now I think there's an internal debate about which way or how, um, what MPB should become.
Right. So Tomoya, we need to wrap up, so we need to go to the final question. So like we discussed today, high school baseball in Japan is very different. The way towards baseball, the thinking how baseball, it's not just about, practicing, but it's about respecting others or building your own character. So how can Japanese baseball players contribute to the Major League Baseball in the future?
That's a that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think there are several aspects of Japanese players' mindset that the U.S. can learn from. Japanese players tend to show more respect for umpires and opponents, I think.
Yeah.
And for example, if a pitcher accidentally hits a batter, they often apologize instead of showing
Right.
a defiant attitude or expecting retaliation, right? This approach promotes sportsmanship and mutual respect. I personally believe that sometimes it's important to just apologize and move on when you make a mistake. And I think this mindset can help maintain harmony and focus on the game rather than escalating conflict. So, overall, the emphasis on respect, humility, and sportsmanship in Japanese baseball can be a valuable lesson for players in the US. Another important aspect is the value of diversity in baseball.
Hmm.
So, diversity in thoughts and approaches enriches the game. Major leagues benefit from having players from different countries with varied cultures and mindsets. And this diversity shows both players and young fans that there isn't just one way to do things,
Hmm.
whether it's showing respect, handling bad calls by umpires, swinging a bat, or playing the game. Different perspectives add variety and depth to the game. So for instance, as I mentioned, the Japanese approach to apologizing and moving on after an error promotes humility and respect, which contrasts with the more confrontational style and, seen sometimes in the US. And this variety helps teach young players that there are multiple valid ways to play and enjoy the game. It encourages a more inclusive and generous attitude towards people who are different. And, if you look at Take Otani, for instance, his experience as a two-way player demonstrates the importance of diversity in baseball.
Right.
So, had he gone straight to the US, he likely wouldn't have become a two-way player.
Mhm.
Japanese baseball allowed him to explore and excel in both pitching and hitting. So, he showcased the possibilities his approach can bring. And so incorporating players from Japan, Latin America, Europe, and other parts of Asia not only enriches the sport, but also fosters a culture of accommodation and appreciation for different ways of thinking and playing, I think. And this diversity makes the game even more interesting and teaches valuable lessons in tolerance and understanding and enriches baseball overall.
Right. Just a quick follow-up question. So, in LA, Orange Country, there's a lot of Asian communities. Do you think Shohei Ohtani is kind of empowering, encouraging such communities?
Definitely.
Mm.
Um, I've talked to many Asian Americans in this country, and then they're feeling a lot of pride, not just Japanese Americans, but Korean Americans, Chinese Americans, even I think a lot of Southeast Asian Southeast Asians feel the pride too, because he's different in a way compared to past Japanese major leaguers. Even Hideo Nomo. I mean, he was a big star, and it brought a lot of pride for Asian Americans in America. but Ohtani became the like he's not, there's no question that he's the best baseball player in the world and
Yeah.
one of the best athletes in the world.
Mhm.
Number one in the sports world. So, there's just so much pride from, and he's the face of baseball. So it's, they feel a lot of pride seeing someone that look like them be on the top, be at the top in this country. And I think gives a lot of pride and confidence. And then I see a lot of young players on my little league team who wants to wear number 17 because of Shohei. And it's not just Asian Americans. It's it's the Caucasians and other races too.
Mhm.
So now, maybe it's possible that Ohtani can help young people feel that it's cool to be Asian,
Ah.
and then cool to be Ohtani. So, it's nice to I think there's a lot of good coming out from Ohtani's success.
Great. So Tomoya Shimura, thanks for joining our show.
Thank you so much for having me.